I wanted to quickly explain how I use Savickas' approach to narrative therapy when I was working as a career counselor on a college campus. I was primarily in charge of the students who were humanities majors or interested in humanities, and then also all the freshmen, because at this particular college, you were not allowed to have a major the first year. You ended up declaring a major in your sophomore year. And so I was helping all those first and second year students choose majors, was typically what my process was. And many of them came from higher SES backgrounds because this was a private college. So there was a lot of exploration oftentimes about those careers that would make more money, medical, engineering, those sorts of things. And my approach was very much a narrative kind of approach to career counseling, or very much like Savickas' approach to counseling. Oftentimes, obviously there were other techniques that I integrated in with that as well, but typically I would explain how to use what we were going to do in session. And I think that that's something that's really important to note. How you do that could look different for each person, but I typically would explain that I'm going to ask some really weird questions. They may not seem related to careers at first, because his method can be very like, what is going on here for the clients, right? So I definitely explain up front that informed consent process is very important. What I'm doing, I also tend to allow clients to do their own interpretations. That is true across all approaches that I use. So instead of like me pointing out the themes in what I'm seeing in their childhood memories, their interests, their books that they watch, the books that they read, the movies they watch, those sorts of things, as you're asking those questions in the career process. I ask them for anything that they feel like is similar between the books that they read, or anything that they feel like is a common theme. I ask that a lot. So what are your common themes? And then we talk about how those may be related to career. So I do tie in that in the beginning of my discussion, that we're going to ask some weird questions. We're going to talk about some things that just don't seem related at all to careers, but I feel like they give me some really good information on what's important to you and who you are, and that can help us decide what is going to be a good career fit, or what kind of considerations you need to consider as you are looking at just different job options that you have. I also discuss values and how important they are, and that if you pick a career that's not congruent with your values, which is what you see a lot of in what you're seeing of those childhood memories, because our values systems are very set up really early in life. And so those are things that you will see. And then personality factors, of course, and their areas of interest oftentimes are coming out in the movies they watch and the books that they read and those sorts of things. So I explain those three areas to them after we've talked about it, and how they can see those connections, and then how they may connect into their career choice. Sometimes I've also explained it as this kind of a backdoor way to get to career options, particularly if they're not sure of where they want to go, or if they have been kind of drilled with one career. That was very common, that they came in with their parents pushing a certain career choice and they just hadn't really considered anything outside of that. So it helps broaden that, and also can kind of be a backdoor to getting them to think about careers differently than maybe they had before, because they may have the sole one thing that they value, but the value that their parents have and the value that they have aren't really congruent with each other. So you can use it for different reasons, but you definitely want to explain it and let them know that it's going to be uncomfortable and weird maybe. I always kind of give that warning that counseling is a little bit weird and uncomfortable sometimes. And that's a normal part of the process, so normalizing that for them. And then kind of helping them tie it together and wrap it up. And sometimes it's helpful to ask, what their takeaway is from all that we've discussed and talked about, so that they can kind of have a common message that they're left with, as well as a task that maybe helps them move on to the next step. What is it that you're going to do now to help them move forward, right? So that plan between sessions. So that's kind of how I've used the Savickas kind of narrative approach to career counseling, and found it very helpful. There are some clients that you may not want to use this particular approach with, because they're much more analytical. So if I particularly had a client that was much more numbers oriented, who'd like been really into the math or really particular into technology sort of fields, then I may not use this approach because they're going to want to see data and numbers. I may use it in conjunction with an assessment so that they can see data and numbers as far as who they are numerically, right? So that's kind of another piece, is like you have to kind of assess what's going to fit your client as well, and what that they're going to find valuable in that process of selecting a career.